So I'm Denice Colson. I am the clinical director here at Eagles Landing Christian Counseling Center. I'm a co-founder and have been the executive director for a number of years, but just stepped down in January in order to pursue some other things. So I have actually been in the counseling field now for 44 years, people. And I started right out of college working in an adolescent residential treatment center, and then went back to grad school because living in the wilderness was just not what I thought it was going to be. And working with teenagers, living in a tent without electricity and running water, I thought, as a biology major in college, I thought that was going to be, great. And while I was in really good shape at the time, I just really decided that was, something I was done doing. So I went back to grad school, Georgia State, got my master's, worked at Mount Perrin Church of God in Atlanta on staff for a year before getting recruited by a company to move to Houston, Texas, where I worked, went back to working doing inpatient counseling. And I don't know what's happening, doing inpatient counseling, and did that take care of it?
Brain still processing.
And then there we go. So I have done a lot of different things. I have my own inpatient program back in the 80s. Early 90s. Houston Christian Care Centers in Texas, and we did dual diagnosis treatment back then. We had a Christian unit where we offered Christian inpatient, both substance abuse treatment and mental health treatment, which at the time in the 90s, people told us we couldn't do that because that wasn't done. And people didn't like each other. And, now we know that's just not true. And we did that. I really ran that program with a psychiatrist business partner. Eventually he retired, and then I decided I really wanted to have children. And so my husband and I had our first child, and we closed down the inpatient program. And since then, I've been doing either parenting or outpatient counseling. And I really obviously love the field of mental health. I started doing trauma work in 1992, before it was trendy and popular. And I started trendy. I absolutely think I contributed to it. I was the first speaker in Georgia when we moved back to Georgia for the LPC A of Georgia to do a 3-day training on trauma for the LPCA. And since then have continued to write and speak. And the reason I stepped down as director is so I could continue to promote the Christian integrated trauma program that I have developed, trauma model. And I've gotten a number of books. This is the new book I just published this year.
Hold it up to.
I'm sorry, the camera. Which camera?
On your computer. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. You can see it. As well as the originals, which are Break Every Stinking Chain book and workbook, which I know several facilities use in their residential treatment programs. And then this is book 2 in the curriculum. So I have 3 books in the series now for the curriculum, as well as a training manual and a book that a lot of folks are using just to introduce pastors and other ministry leaders 10 reasons why trauma, 10 reasons why people need to be talking about it. Christians need to be talking about it. So that really is my passion, and I believe what God has called me to do, and has been what I've been doing now for a number of years. So I today wanted to talk a little bit about a different approach to talking about trauma and addiction. And if we can get the PowerPoint to work the way I want it to work, then we will be golden.
I can't ever remember what that, oh, there you go.
Did I get it to work? Yay!
I can't remember what that setting is, but you figured it out.
I figured it out.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a training I do that's a 3-day training. So this is just a brief introduction, and I just put together some slides to try to get it to, why is it not advancing? It's not advancing at all. Thank you very much. So we will just click through. So probably y'all know these statistics, but some of you all I know are not addiction counselors. I'm also a master addiction counselor, started my addiction training in Houston. I really started doing addiction training because of trauma. Because of the trauma training, and I saw the links between addiction and trauma. That's why I started doing it. Now I do, there has been a lot of addiction in my family. Both grandfathers were alcoholics, very abusive alcoholics who never did go into recovery before passing away. And so I'm an adult child of alcoholics. And my brother had an issue with addiction as a young adult. He is also in long-term recovery. So this is an interesting statistic. So what this shows is that 3.3 million adults, 48.6% of the population of the US received either mental health treatment and no substance abuse treatment in 2024. So this is a recent statistic. We are delayed usually a year for statistics. But both substance abuse treatment and mental health treatment, 19.2% received dual diagnosis treatment in 2024. And a smaller population, 155,000, received substance abuse treatment, but no mental health treatment. So I thought this was an interesting statistic. Only 29.9% received no treatment in 2024. So one of the things I know that we all care about is treatment, and we want to see people receiving treatment, and we are accomplishing that. I think that's a good sign on the one hand. On the other hand, it's kind of sad that there has to be so much treatment. But I think that the growth and understanding of trauma and the importance of dealing with what people usually talk about as past trauma has grown significantly, and is something that when I first started talking about it and did a lot of presentations with Ph.D, I was a DUI evaluater for, 6 or 7 years before COVID hit, and I decided I'm not doing this over the internet anymore. Then, I saw a lot of trauma connected to all the DUIs that I did evaluation for. And when I first started talking, people were really upset with me at the conferences I would attend. They were really get in my face and really kind of tell me off because I would talk about what is addiction, what is substance use, because there are some definitions that we've been using. The most common, I think, is that it's the substance. The substance causes addiction. If you take it enough, you'll get addicted. And so that's been the most common, really, definition that people have used. And then there's the genetic definition that it runs in families due to genetics. There's a gene somewhere that makes people more likely to develop an addiction. And I don't know that anything's been found. It's just that they've never found anything. I know there was a big research study in Texas when I was living there. They were looking in the brain to find a place in the brain that was different for addicts, the non-addicts, and they just never really did find anything that indicated the brain of an addict is different. I'm gonna have to do it this way. So the first thing I did was, want to talk about is just rethinking what is it? Addiction. What is it? And the ACE study, even before the ACE study was actually done, I was already using a trauma model. I was already had been trained by an addiction counselor in Texas who had developed a program where he said that really childhood trauma is at the source of addiction, is at the root of addiction. Intuitively, based on his experience, and he had developed a model for recovery for trauma that he ran along with recovery from addiction. But everybody laughed at me. In fact, I actually got heckled at an LPC conference where I was speaking when I talked about addiction really being rooted more in childhood trauma before the ACE study came out. Literally disrupted these professionals disrupted my class. So much so that one of the other folks who wanted to hear went and got somebody to come in and get them to shut up. But now we have the ACE study, and we see that there is a lot of function for substance use. And most substance use starts out as a survival response. That's all it is. It's just a way to survive, because that's what we all want to do, is we all want to survive. And we, instead of turning to God, we turn to something else. Something that's familiar, something that's available, something that initially actually feels like it helps until it decides to kill us. But, initially it seems like it helps. It's a deception. As Christians, we know there's more to it because it's also a spiritual issue. We know that. And that the enemy really wants us to kill ourselves. If he can't kill us outright, really wants us to kill ourselves. So Dr. Ph.D. and Dr. Andis started the ACE study, and I have on my plan this year to do a deep dive into the ACE study, a training on that if anybody's interested. But he says addiction is the unconscious compulsive use of psychoactive materials or agents in an attempt to deal with a problem. Addiction is actually evidence of another problem. And that we should really be operating out of that idea. Dr. Daniel Simrock, who's at the Center for Addiction Sciences at University of Tennessee, says addiction shouldn't be called addiction. It should be called ritualized compulsive comfort seeking. It's a lot longer and a lot harder to say, isn't it? Just like substance use disordered individual. And I realize I'm supposed to say substance use disordered individual as opposed to addict or addiction. And I try to do my best to try to be as
compulsive comfort seeking individual.
Yes, ritualized compulsive comfort seeking individual. And so that is really what I think. Really, there's probably some truth in all of the things. Maybe there's a gene that we have not discovered yet. Maybe it's just that we all have inborn sin, and that's the gene that we all have. Because if it's not substances, it's something, food, sex, anything that brings us comfort. And, but I do think that substance use is functionally rooted. It serves a purpose. So when I do treatment, and nowadays, all I do is outpatient. I haven't done inpatient or residential treatment in 25 years, maybe now. I do think that I talk about it from that perspective that, hey, this really just is a survival response. That's really all it is. But now what happens is it takes over your brain. It hijacks your brain. And now there's some chemical reactions that begin to take place. It rewires your brain. And it's now become the boss of you. And I tell people, I talk about addiction as it's like a date rapist. Everybody, you go out, you want to date somebody, you want to have connections. And so you go out on a date, other people have gone out with this person and they were fine. So why not me? And all of a sudden you find yourself doing things and saying things you really didn't intend to do. And all of a sudden you're being controlled and you're experiencing things that you never planned to have in your life. And then it robs you. It robs you of so much of your dignity, of your self-control, of your personal power, of your identity, friends, family. It robs you. Perhaps some families are predisposed. We don't know past my grandfathers if there was any other addiction in our family. We don't know that. But it's possible. But maybe it's all three things. But we do know, based on research, that someone with an ACE, Adverse Childhood Experiences score, of 4 or more is 450% more likely, or no, I'm sorry, 500% more likely to become an alcoholic as an adult. And a male who has an ACE score of 6 or more, 6 out of 10, because 10 is the max, is 7,600% more likely to use IV drugs as an adult. I mean, 7,600 freaking percent is a lot of percent right there. And so that is really hard to ignore because that is something we do know. And that study has been replicated not only by the original authors of these various studies, but Dr. Anda and Dr. Felitti, but in every state and all over the world now, the same statistics are showing up. So what I did based on my experience with the secular model I was using in Houston that I was first introduced to, and then wanting to have a Christian, obviously Christian integration, God led me to develop the Strategic Trauma and Abuse Recovery System, or 12STR, is what I call it. It's a structured process for treating trauma and helping people heal from the wounds of trauma, going beyond symptoms. We are not symptom focused, we are source focused, which is different than pretty much every model out there. Most models consider the source the symptoms. So we are source focused. It is evidence informed, trauma specific. It is an entire philosophy, theory, model of approaching mental health and substance use disorders. See, I did use SUDS there, right?
That's right.
An unfortunate acronym, in my opinion, but so.
You gotta go with the literature.
Exactly.
Terminology.
That's right.
Very conventional.
That's right. So our core belief is that God wants us to have a relationship with him. That is our core main belief. And what gets in the way of people putting their faith in God? Trauma. Trauma really gets in the way, because what it does is it changes people's view of who God is, of who they are, of what relationships are and should be. So it's like trauma puts these giant boulders in people's way of hearing the Holy Spirit calling to them. I have this great little slide, I didn't put it in, of this image of the Holy Spirit as a tower of fire. And I believe that the Holy Spirit is calling to everyone, but trauma and then the things that come along with it, all the survival responses that come along with that, block people's view of God. So our job, I believe, as what our calling is in the mental health and addiction field, is to help people dig up the boulders, till the soil, and get those things, clear the path for the Holy Spirit to, for people to hear from the Holy Spirit. That really is my passion and my ultimate goal. I don't always say that when I'm doing secular conferences, but that truly is my core goal. So we have in all the research I did in, I was influenced by the original model that was called idiotropic trauma management. And I was a trainer in that before a lot of bad things happened. And God shoved me out the door and said, this is what I want you to do. And so I was really influenced by AA, by the 12-step model, because I guess I was listening to the big book on Audible probably. And I was praying, God, how can I know there's more than just this model. This is a good model. The theory's good, but it's limited. We're losing people. How do we bring, and now in all the research, there's really 3 phases of recovery that people need to go through. How do I bring it all together? And I think AA does a really good job of that, of allowing people to make choices and move through recovery at their own pace. And so I was sitting here in the parking lot praying about that, and felt inspired, ran in and wrote down the 12 stages, pretty much in the form that we have them now. So there are 3 phases: safety, grieving, and reconnecting. The heart really is the heart of recovery. The heart's in the wrong place, but the heart of recovery really is the phase 2. But we need phase 1. And we'll talk a little bit more about why we need phase 1. It's based on the idea that people are resilient. Oh my gosh. Some of the sexual abuse, physical abuse I've heard is incredible that people survive. I mean, I think about the childhood trauma. I experienced a lot of bullying. We moved every year to 2 years of my life. I was always new, always an outsider, and had a lot of stress and anxiety. I had school phobia by the time I was in second grade, school phobia, sick every night, sick every morning. It's amazing I made it through graduate school. And but it's only by the grace of God and the fact that he called me. But I do believe God wired us to be resilient. And people survive. People survive. And I think that God is the source of all healing, and he's created a lot of natural healing. And sometimes what we try to do to heal ourselves blocks that natural healing. And so we believe that God can heal our brains and restore our identities. It's not as simple as snapping your fingers. I wish it was that simple, but there's a strategy to it and a process. And it usually involves interaction and relationship with somebody else. And so the phases, the 3 phases of recovery, and then broken down into 12 stages, really provides just a roadmap for people to follow with structure. Because without structure, people get lost and get focused on survival responses and trying to change themselves and make themselves better. So this is the complete model here. The first, and you'll see those, most of you are familiar with the 12 steps, so you'll see the influence right away. But stage 1 is admitting I'm wounded and powerless, but not helpless. There's a lot of issues in the addiction field on the term powerless right now, and has been for the past probably 10 years. People don't like it. They don't want it. But I think people confuse powerless and helpless. And stage 2, I'm going to stop trying to fix myself and humbly ask God to heal me and participate in that healing. Stage 3, I'm accepting I have to grieve and stop numbing with substances or stoicism. And stage 4, partnering with a counselor or recovery coach to move on to phase 2. So this series, Break Every Sneaking Chain, is all about this phase 1 process. So if you had clients that you wanted to work with, this is all about the phase 1 and walking them through those steps. And if, okay, that was smart. Thank you. Got onto my computer.
Perfect.
Perfect. It'll be okay.
Okay.
Miranda,
resilient.
Max are resilient.
Miranda is
Where's the
wondering
paper
if,
towels?
we can send out the power.
I can absolutely, so Apple Music came on. I can absolutely, I don't want to listen to Apple Music. Thank you very much. Oh goodness, what happened here? Start listening. No, I don't want to do that. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing. So I will definitely send, I'll be happy to send out the PowerPoint. Yeah, I'll be happy to do that. We'll see if I get through the whole thing, Miranda.
Good.
All right, there we go. Y'all probably couldn't even see it, huh?
No.
The Apple
We just
Music
saw
popped
Never
up on my
changed.
screen. Because I spilled
We've got a
water.
powerless thing though. I teach steps, to our guys at Hope Quest. I teach steps class, and I really just try to give them some broader concepts. I'm not walking each one of them through it. That's, they have other ways of doing that. And then also integrating some biblical, concepts into the steps piece. But when I get to the powerless one, I find that the pushback I get is sometimes centered around like this idea like you're not worthy. Right? Being powerless is the same as being unworthy for some reason. And I guess I get it, but I think that it's always worth pausing at that point and just allowing the group or allowing the individual to just share their thoughts.
Yeah.
Right. How much are they holding on to versus.
And I like to ask people, what does that mean to you? What does it mean to you? Because the definition of words is always different, or can be different for people. What does that mean? So then this is the curriculum for phase 2. This is the curriculum for phase 2. This is the newer book. Miranda, do you have another question? You had your hand up, I noticed. You're muted.
I was thinking in the same, I wrote that down when you said that, I'm following you, right? And I have had a hard time with some of my clients also with admitting powerless. For some reason, even though they know they whooped, they will not say that word. So what I have to get them to do, I said, go back in your life and think about those things that you've tried to fix, manage, manipulate, and control. And if you have any of those things going on, it's some powerlessness somewhere.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And what I did when we started our research project, our first research project, my research team said, you need some way of knowing when it's time to move from one stage in phase 1 to the next stage. Because phase 2 is well defined with that, but phase 1 is not. So I developed these, what we call readiness rulers. I'm really into MI. I really like MI. I'll be doing an MI training later on in March. I think it is March 5th is the MI training that I'll be doing on MI training with trauma survivors and going over some of those readiness rulers and how I've used some of the concepts to develop my own different readiness rulers. And so I use that. So in that stage 1 readiness ruler, I break down powerlessness with a number of statements that I get that I can, like 8, I think, total statements that we discuss after a person, contemplates how much they identify with the statement. And that's one of the ways that I do it, and I've helped counselors who want to use the model to help their clients to understand and break down, what does that mean? What does it actually mean? So here is my definition of trauma: any event from outside of your power, control, or conscious choice, which contradicts your identity to the point that it raises your stress to toxic levels and creates unacceptable losses. So I think of trauma as a wound to your identity. In 2014, SAMHSA, they put out their definition of trauma, and it's similar to this, but different. My focus is on not so much the symptoms, but the actual event itself of trauma, which, that means that what affects me one way may affect you a different way, based on personality, based on past experiences. I don't share it a lot, but I attempted to use substances, but not until my 20s, and it just didn't take. My stomach would not allow it. My stomach kept, no, we're not going to do this. And I was terrified of needles, so I couldn't do anything else but that. So alcohol was tolerable, but I couldn't do it. So
You have to be persistent.
you have to be consistent. And I was,
It eventually takes.
and I just didn't start young enough.
You just didn't continue is what that
That's
is. I
right.
wasn't young enough to continue.
So anyway, I was experiencing a lot of toxic stress in my life at the time in a very abusive relationship. I kind of said this already, and I think we have to look beyond PTSD in the mental health field. That's kind of been the crux of trauma is PTSD, and initially psychiatrists got to tell us what was traumatic. It had to be life or death, and had to be horror, and all these stupid things, and which totally ruled out childhood sexual abuse. And we now know that there's so many other things that are really qualify as trauma, even not in the ACE study, because they only looked at 10 different things. And there's a lot more than that, we know that. But it is a literal wound to your identity, which really comes and grows out of, or seems to be housed and understood by your brain. As Christians, we believe that our identity is going to continue on. We will have an identity in heaven, but we're not going to have a brain anymore, because we will have new bodies. And so, we're not going to have this stuff all the time that we've been influenced by. Now, your identity starts with your genetics. We are all wired differently from birth. Personality theorists believe we have our own personalities from birth. God says, the Bible says, we are all created as individuals, and that is not just genetic. So there is a spirit as well as the body and the brain. But then we have our personal experiences. We have our own core values, beliefs, expectations, and needs and all of these things work together to form our identity. So I have put together what I call a blueprint for building a trauma survivor. And this is the blueprint that I use and that I use with clients. And we're going to break it down into the initial impact and the long-term impact.
Unlike you guys.
So the initial impact is that there's an event that happens outside of our conscious control, contradicts or wounds our identity. Our identity made up of our values, beliefs, expectations, and needs, and then immediately creates loss. Even if we're not aware of the loss, it immediately creates loss. Usually we're first aware of our feelings, our emotions, because of the chemical reaction that takes place in our brain. Stage 2, our brain interprets this as threatening, triggers the limbic system, the fight or flight part of the brain. It takes over now and runs the brain as long as we're in that toxic stress state, which can last a lifetime. And the grief response begins. Now, it's possible that the grief response, that grief is resolved, the relationship is resolved. Most trauma comes through relationships. And we are wounded more deeply by relationships because of our expectations. So I might be walking down the street and a stranger, calls me a name. Well, it's going to hurt my feelings because, that's who I am. But I'm going to get over it. I'm going to move on. I'm going to get over it. But if my husband calls me a name, that's a totally different thing because my expectations of him are so different than my expectations of a stranger, right? And most trauma or traumatic events or emotional wounds or adverse experiences happen in relationships. But there are other things that happen, car accidents that are really nobody's fault. Hurricanes, COVID, that type of stuff. So a grief response can be resolved, and those are the things that we're not worried about. The things we're worried about are those that are not resolved, and that the brain stores away the losses, the emotion, and moves on into survival. Because that's how we're created, to survive. So the brain rallies to survive, activating new survival responses. And this is what we do to survive. And sometimes they are things that are in line with our core values and beliefs, and sometimes they are not things that are in line with our core values and beliefs. And so our brain is always analyzing, always organizing itself. And in stage 5, our brain compares our own responses to our core values and beliefs. When there's a contradiction, this creates more loss. In stage 6, this again triggers the limbic system in the brain because now we're experiencing losses, but from our own behavior. And we experience more grief. And we rotate back up to stage 4 where the brain rallies to survive. And now we develop survival responses to our survival responses. So for example, in I can't remember, some of y'all have probably heard this story. in 1988, I was assaulted at knife point, and I was getting in my car, a man grabbed me from behind, started choking me and clawing me, held the knife to my back, pushed me down in my car. I fought, I screamed, I yelled. I had a 2-seater sports car, which was a pretty red one with T-tops. I thought he pushed me down the car. I turned so that I could keep my knees up on my chest, try to protect myself a little bit. And I thought, if I let him take me, I'm not coming back. And there was a lady with him, and she went around to the door, and I thought, oh, great, they're going to sandwich me in between them and take my car, and I'm gone. So I really fought. Finally, I stopped and listened to him, and he was calling me names and saying, give me the keys. So I threw the keys at him. I had a wad of keys because this car was bad news. That's a whole nother story.
That's all in the trauma.
That's a whole nother trauma. How many times it had been broken into and the T-top stolen. And so I threw him the keys, and the woman actually was trying to help me. She opened the door, and I was able to scoot out on my back and get away. But that taught me to fight. And which is not, while verbally, I'll argue, but I'm not a fist fighter person. I thought I was a nonviolent person. And a few months later, 6 months maybe later, I was with my singles group at my church, and we were leaving an event, and there was a girl and a guy that I was riding with, and it was dark, and we were coming out and going to the car, and she'd gone on, and I was behind her, and it was dark, and it was this row of townhouses, and the guy stayed behind, and he was talking. And so finally he decided to catch up with us, and he came running up behind me. And I panicked, turned, and kicked him as hard as I could. And this was my friend. Okay. I learned a survival response that, that's very simple, but that's something that is against my nature, to try to hurt my friends. Everything turned out okay. We're married. We have 3 children. So no permanent damage.
Good way to be. I want to mention it. Yeah.
So as we move forward and move forward in our survival responses, what begins to happen as time passes, we forget, we lose track, we forget how this started. And we begin to just see ourselves through the filter of our survival responses. That's all we see. And so we cycle and we cycle and we cycle, and eventually developed a trauma survivor identity. Our perception of ourself changes, our personal identity changes. And now we become known as our survival responses. And people around us, all they can see are our survival responses. So now what's happening is there's this feedback loop. Somebody's coming in, they've got the energy of, I'm a mean dude, or I'm a tough chick. And they'll even tell me that in counseling, this is who I am, Denise. I'm like, okay. I'm not going to cry. I don't cry. Okay, that's fine. You don't need to cry. And people have been saying, oh gosh, you're right. You're a mean guy. I'm scared of you. I'm going to stay away from you. So now not only has their perception changed, the people around them's perception has changed, and they're giving them feedback that they're right. This is your real identity, when that is not their real identity at all. They have a God-given identity that's hidden behind the trauma survivor identity. I'm going to skip that because we don't have time. So when clients come in, all we see is this survivor identity. And Dr. Felitti says, again, we have to give up our old mechanistic explanation of addiction in favor of one that explains us in terms of its psychodynamics. Unconscious, although understandable decisions being made to seek chemical relief from the ongoing effects of old trauma, often at the cost of accepting future health risk. So it's really the idea that there's really stuff beneath the surface. All we can see is what's on the surface. But for survivors, we see, this paradoxical relationship. We see these symptoms, whether it's substance use, whether it's depression, anxiety, we see it as a problem. Their brain sees it as a survivor response, a solution. And we're asking them to give up their solution before we've provided an alternate solution. We just say, let go of the building and float in midair until we can get a helicopter to you. People can't do that. We got to give them a life raft first. I mixed my metaphors there. Sorry about that. But this paradoxical, so we want to offer them an alternate solution, find the true source of the pain. So I'm going to skip through some of this. What I want to get to is this, the substance use disordered family system. So what I want to talk about and what I really wanted to share with you guys is that our approach sees addiction as trauma, not only for the family, but the survivor themselves. The addict is experiencing the trauma of addiction. We think of chronic physical illness as a source of trauma, right? Why not think of addiction the same way? So that's what I want to talk about. So we're going to do a role play. So you don't have to get up, you don't have to move around, you don't have to do anything like that. But I want you in your mind to pick, besides Bob, the father, I want you to pick Mary, Sue, or John as a character that you want to role play as. And I'm going to walk us through two scenarios and ask some questions. We're going to walk through the trauma survivor blueprint and demonstrate how trauma is developed internally for each person in the family. And then we're going to now talk about Dad and talk about how he is developing the same trauma as the family is from the substance itself. All right, everybody got on board? So when y'all online, you can just unmute yourselves and call out the responses when it's time, okay? All right, so here's the first role play. So you're a family, it's New Year's Eve, you're celebrating together with some neighborhood families that you're all friends with, and the kids have the same ages. Everybody's at a restaurant, you're enjoying yourselves. Now Bob, we're going to say Bob, the father, this is the first incident that he's experienced of addiction, we're going to say, okay? Imaginary, right? But this for the sake of the demonstration. So he has crossed that invisible line from a user to an abuser, but it's invisible. We don't know where that line is. But he has crossed that line. So everybody's sitting, and parents are men are with men, women with women, and the kids are together. So if you're role playing as mom, you hear, your husband's had some beers before he left the house, and now he's had several more at the restaurant. And you hear noise and you look over in time to see him. He has dumped his entire plate in his lap accidentally. He stands up, you stand up to try to go help him, and he says, you know, and as he kind of wobbly walks to the bathroom, he says, oh, I'm sorry, I won't advance. He's dumped his entire plate. I can take care of myself, bitch. In front of everybody. All right. He's obviously drunk. He's not walking straight. And he's now made this scene in front of not only your friends and family, but the whole restaurant. So that's the first incident. So here we have the family. So as mom, what are you feeling right now as mom? Those of you role-playing mom.
I'm very embarrassed.
Yeah, embarrassed. Yeah.
Yep,
And then I'm angry because you called me out my name
yep,
in front of folks.
that's right.
And
Yep.
fearful.
And fearful.
Mm-hmm.
Now, does his behavior contradict your core values and beliefs, your expectations of how he should be behaving in public?
Yes.
Definitely.
Yes, especially if that's the first incident
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
she has seen.
Yes, yeah, okay. Now, those of you role-playing as Sue, the teenage girl, young teenage girl, what might you be feeling?
Fearful, embarrassed.
Humiliated in front of your friends? Because, you know, parents are supposed to be on their most unembarrassing behavior in public.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does your dad's behavior contradict your values and beliefs about how fathers are supposed to behave?
Yep.
Absolutely. And what about John? Those of you role-playing as John? What?
Confused.
Confused and embarrassed.
Yep, yep.
Maybe
Okay.
even a little scared.
Scared.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Depends on who your dad is.
yep, yep.
Well, John's 6 years old. I think he's a little confused.
Confused, yes. Yep. All right, very good. So then let's go to the next one. So in the initial stage of the trauma survivor blueprint that we walked through, there's this contradiction, this event outside of your conscious control that happens. Now, in stage 2, you experience losses. This triggers the limbic system of your brain. So let's talk about losses. Let's go back to mom. Mom, what might you have lost in this one incident? What might you have lost either externally or internally?
Sense of security.
Security.
Mm-hmm.
What else?
Lost respect.
Yeah.
Respect for your husband.
Mm-hmm.
What about those friends that are all watching?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You might lose face,
And there's
standing.
some shame in there.
That's right. That's right. What about you? Those of you role-playing as Sue, what might you have lost?
You might have lost your sense of security. that
Security.
Your dad would always be available to watch out for you.
Yeah.
He can't even watch out for himself right now.
Yep. Okay. So what about John? What might John lose at 6?
Same, like sense of safety, security.
Yeah, some respect and some sense of pride in his father.
Respect
Mhm.
and pride. Yep. So
Yeah, I could see him, I've never seen Dad act this way before. All you see is his eyes looking over the table. Like,
yeah,
like,
right. Mhm.
mhm.
Another thing with the mom, and this
Yeah.
just hit me, Dr. Colson.
Uh-huh.
I feel uncovered because the
Ah, exposed.
husband spiritually
Exposed.
covers the family.
Mhm.
Oh, gotcha.
I
So
feel uncovered.
vulnerable.
Yes.
Yes. Good. So this is the first incident. Now we're saying that now you can't resolve it. I mean, how do you resolve this? And dad, when you approach him, let's say dad's like, oh, that was no big deal. You're overreacting.
Yeah.
You know,
I
I
just had to.
just had too much. It is a one-time thing. Everybody, it was actually the guy, this other guy's fault anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, common survival responses with addiction are defend, denial, blame, use again. So your brain rallies to survive, activating new survival responses. So mom, what might you do in response?
Make excuse for him.
Excuses.
Possibly. Yeah.
Absolutely. Make excuses.
It was New Year's Eve and he just drank too much.
Yeah.
That was that.
Justify.
Yeah.
Yeah. What might you do in response as the teenage girl?
Withdraw.
Withdraw. That's a very common response with teenagers, right? Withdraw. Maybe not hang out with those friends as much. And then, and for the 6-year-old, what might the 6-year-old do?
Well, again, I'm sorry, go ahead, Donnie.
No, he would probably rebound a little bit easier because of the pride that he has for his father. And he's only seen it one time, but he'll be still cautious about his father's behavior around his friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's essentially what I was going to say. At that young age, he's not going to forget it, but it's less likely to stick in his psyche as well, I think, because as a one-time incident, it's more likely to roll off his back.
Yeah. So there's a lot, here when you think about survival responses, it's based on your age, your personality type. It's based on a lot of different factors, right? So now let's say that the dad says, oh, hey, these people want to get together, or the neighbors invite you to another party like this. What might mom or the daughter or the son do? I don't know about that.
I think I'm busy.
I might be busy that day. All right. So now let's
Make
talk
sure
about,
there's no beer in the house before you leave.
absolutely. So now let's talk about losses as a result of your own. I mean, do any of those survival responses contradict your core, not your adjusted, your core values and beliefs about how you should be behaving? Absolutely. Yeah. Withdrawal, isolation. So your own core values are contradicted. You experience more losses. What might you lose as a result of those contradictions?
Maybe your sense of who you thought you were up until that time.
Your sense of your identity.
Yeah.
A perception of yourself, a perception of your father or husband.
Self-esteem.
Self-esteem.
I think you become more guarded. And so what I'm thinking about is like less participation, like less, maybe it's like trust or other things, but you don't really
You might lose trust.
if you put yourself out there, it might happen again. So you're like, I don't know.
Do I want to do this again?
I don't know if I can trust.
When I was heckled at the LPCA conference, I didn't go back for
Yeah.
10 years.
I mean, it's kind of unique because this is dad and everything, but I think about like how we had, I don't know I can't remember there's preconceptions, right?
Right.
Based on relationships.
Yep. Yep.
That you push into place. So if that was a traumatic experience with this certain people, maybe he grows up to like be untrustworthy of, authority figures or men or whatever, right?
Exactly. So that's when we began to see the mask growing. It's subtle at first, may just be very subtle changes at first. But we see this mask growing. People are having this mask develop over their true identity. They're freaky masks too. So now let's talk about dad. Number one, what do you think he might feel as a result of this experience? And does his drinking behavior contradict his own core values and beliefs? Do you think it was his intent to go to this party, humiliate himself, humiliate his family, and even verbally abuse his wife? Was that his plan?
No.
That was not his plan. Do you think he taught his children to behave differently in public than he behaved? Absolutely.
Mhm, mhm,
So his own toxic, by toxic, I mean substance impacted behavior
mhm,
has contradicted his core values and beliefs. What has he lost? He's lost
Oh.
self-respect.
mhm,
He's lost respect from the friends, the family. He's lost closeness. He's lost possibly even the opportunity to socialize again.
mhm,
And is it going to be resolved? Not if he's crossed that invisible line. And now he's justifying, denying, and blaming, and doing all the things that are related to substance use in the brain. So it's going to move forward. It's going to get repressed, helped by the substance itself. It's going to get repressed. He may not even feel those losses. That doesn't mean they're not there. And what might he do in response? Blame somebody else, justify his behavior, minimize his behavior, deny it.
Yeah.
As a result of his own survival responses, he's going to experience more losses and more opportunities, even for recovery.
Dr.
So,
Colson,
yes,
would
let me
that,
make my final point, and I'll answer your question.
okay,
So I want you to see is that father is developing a survivor identity also. His mask is also growing. All right, Pastor Ron.
Donnie had one first.
Oh, Donnie. It was Donnie. I'm sorry. I can't tell.
okay. Would the father's response be more likely what you say if his father was an alcoholic and he had seen that behavior before? Would that change his perception of that incident that happens in the restaurant?
So then we have complex trauma, don't we?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because if in this scenario, we're trying to pretend he doesn't have any childhood trauma, but that's very unusual. So,
Right.
so then we have complex trauma because we have trauma not only from childhood, but now piling on top of that is trauma from the substance itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was the point that I wanted to raise, Dr. Colson. Because that going into it, the premise was that there was no previous trauma.
Right.
So the what I wanted to ask was there not an underlying red flag that this man was irresponsible enough to drink a couple of beers before he went to the party, assuming then that he drove to this party with a couple of beers in him? So, it seems to me his core values were already compromised before he even got there.
Right, because he had crossed that invisible line. You don't know when that is. We can't see that from the outside. And it's different for different people. I have a client that I did this model with. She really only drank on occasion with her coffee, pouring liquor in her coffee in the mornings. And then, she really only drank on occasion, but what really got her attention finally is when she was at a restaurant taking care of her grandbaby, and she was drinking at the restaurant while she was babysitting her grandbaby. And somebody from the restaurant saw her and called the parents, and they came and took the child and cut off all contact and said, "Mom, you have a problem."
Mhm.
So that compromise takes place very gradually, very slowly. So what I want you to see here is that as time goes by and more and more and more incidents happen, that the substance creates trauma for the user as much as it does for the family. And the way that this model works is we work on the substance as a source of trauma. So we have people write in phase 2 about the substance as a perpetrator. And it is the absolute best prevention, I think, you can ever do, because it changes the person's relationship with the substance. Bye-bye. It changes the person's relationship with the substance itself. Some people are white knuckling it. Some people are, there's still this love for the substance, but and at the same time, this intellectual knowledge that I can't ever use it again, but man, wouldn't it be nice? And this process of writing about it, identifying the losses, identify the survivor responses and the additional losses, what that does is it changes a person's relationship with the substance forever, to where they are never again tempted to use. Because now they see that this is my enemy. This is not my friend. So our approach to substance use is to educate clients about the impact of trauma on their current lives, to offer an alternative perspective. The trauma wound is the source of their pain, and substance use is an attempted but failed solution. It's honestly a very common solution. There's a lot more risky drinking that goes on than there is addiction. A lot more. What is it? I think the statistics last that I looked were like 75% of people who drink are risky drinkers, whereas only 25%, or no, 5% become addicted. 20% are occasional users, 70% risky drinkers, 20%. Now that is decreasing. There's a lot of more information about dangers of alcohol. Young people are decreasing their use, which is amazing. Of course, they're smoking pot, but
They just switched.
So we offer a structured plan of trauma recovery as an alternative while getting sober, while going through a 12-step program, if they're willing to do that, getting sober. We do parallel phase 1 of the trauma recovery program, educating them about trauma, and then moving them on when they have enough sobriety to phase 2. And if we can, we start writing first about the substance. I had a client recently who, that's what she did. We started writing about the substance. She was going to AA, going to Celebrate Recovery. But what happened was the childhood trauma became so pressing, and she relapsed. And so she had to go to residential care, which actually was the absolute most best thing for her. It was her 3rd trip to residential care. But this time she went to a different program. She was very familiar with the trauma work. When she came back 6 months later, she was ready to go because they
Mhm.
knew what I did, and they interfaced with me and prepared her
Mhm.
to do the phase 2 work, which she's doing now with her husband, which is amazing. So I'm going to answer questions. I'm so sorry I ran late. I always prepare more, and I actually had some videos we're not going to show though. We'll do that again some other time. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I will send out the whole PowerPoint to you.
Beautiful.
So that everybody will have all the information. Kamika, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. I've never thought about this in this way before. And I appreciate you. Like, this is my first time hearing the trauma model from the perspective of the substance being the trauma itself. And that has me thinking, will that be, can we, let's look at it like this, can we use ourselves as a source of trauma? Or if we are looking at it from the standpoint of the substance being a source of trauma, and because it's like dealing with us, you know, like directly confronting things that we've done, our survival responses, our losses and contradictions of expectations, is that the same as dealing with you as being the source of your own trauma when in line with substance use? Or can we be a source of trauma? And could we go through this model as ourselves?
So let's go back to the definition. The definition of trauma is an event outside of your conscious control.
Right.
So on the one hand, using a substance, drinking a beer is within your control. On the
Mhm.
other hand, becoming a substance use disordered individual is outside of your control.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's not you as the source of trauma. You cannot be your source of trauma. You can be a source of trauma for somebody else. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
you cannot, it does not fit the definition of the source of trauma. However, the substance does. Nobody says, I can't wait to grow up and become an alcoholic. That is what I want to do with my life. I want to be a drug addict. Nobody does that. It's that progression. We start using the substance as a survival response. It takes over the brain and now controls our brain. See, I keep getting that thumbs up, but I don't mean to. And and that's the progression. So we write about the substance, externalizing it as the source of trauma. Now, as you know, you are much more familiar with the model. So you know that in stage 3, we write about our survival responses. And that's where we're addressing our own behavior as a source of loss. Not as a source of trauma, but as a source of loss. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't even think
If you
about
haven't
that.
been through the training or the model, you may not fully understand my explanation. So hopefully that made enough sense to everybody. All right, Pastor Ron.
Yeah, going back to what you were talking about earlier with treatment, one of the things that you caught my eye or caught my ear was when you said evidence informed and trauma centric, which I think was extremely well put. So thank you for that. As I said in my introduction, one of the things that I do, one of the things that I focus on is prison ministry. At any given time, I work with about a dozen guys from around the country by mail, chiefly. Occasionally, a few of my work with by phone, but most of my work with by mail. And about half of them are in for sexual offenses. And of course, we all know, you know, the statistics and so forth. Virtually all of them that are in there for sexual offenses are themselves victims of childhood sexual abuse. So they all have
Right.
that trauma in
That's right.
their history.
That's right.
The problem that I'm encountering, and I've encountered this over and over and over again, I'd say probably close to 100% of the time, if not 100% of the time, is the so-called treatment programs that the states funnel incarcerated people through, where they put them in these treatment programs, again, air quotes, that you're sick and you'll always be sick. They focus on relapse prevention. There's absolutely no focus on recovery. They don't give these guys any hope for getting better. And then they come to me, they write to me and they say, well, they say this is what I have to do to not offend again, but they never teach them what to do to get better. So one of the things that I'm doing in another aspect of my work is advocacy for changing how prisons do their work, changing how prisons function. So I'm looking for ideas, maybe from yourself and from others. How can we better approach this situation from that standpoint? What can we as a group do, both as yourself as clinicians and myself as a faith-based leader, to get the state to change the way they approach these things, to actually help people get better, to help people recover, not just deal with it, and say, oh, well, we don't want you to offend again, but to actually get better. Do you have suggestions on that?
Well, I don't know that I can address that because that's a huge, huge question, but
It is.
what can I,
Lots of time.
what I can say is that I have not had the opportunity to work with sexual perpetrators with this model, except to work with their substance use. But I believe that if you could get someone to not only commit to sobriety, but also do this type of trauma work on the childhood sexual abuse, that you might see some real change. Because again, you are changing their relationship with the substance or with the behavior. You're now changing their relationship because they have embraced the sexual abuse as their identity. Now this is my survivor identity. And if we can resolve the childhood trauma and allow that identity to dissolve and the core identity to emerge, then I think there's the possibility of real change. And I would love to see research done.
Yeah, I would too. And just for full disclosure, I am a childhood sexual abuse survivor. Okay. I was abused for years. So, I overcame it.
Right.
Okay.
Well, and not
So,
everybody becomes a perpetrator that's been a survivor.
That's right.
That's
So,
not,
not
that's a myth.
everybody will get sick as a result of this. Okay. But the states don't seem to realize that.
Everybody develops survival responses. Not everybody becomes again, I think that perpetrating others is a survival response.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a survival response. And if we can, resolve those core losses and heal that childhood wound, then the survival responses tend to resolve on their own and go away. My next training is February 16th through the 18th online. I'll be doing the 3-day intensive. I just extended the early bird fee ended January 31st. I had a couple requests, so I just extended it to the 11th. I think it's the 11th. I extended it to February 11th. If y'all are interested and want to know more, if you're not ready to commit to 3 days, I have another half-day training, more than just an hour that I had today. I have another half-day training on the 27th of February 27th. Thank you, Monica. She's over here feeding me dates. On February 27th, so that you can come just for a half day. It's like $30 right now. There's CEs if you're an LPC. I haven't done GACA. GACA's so expensive. Their CEs are so expensive. And I haven't done NADAC, I've considered that, but I do have LPC CEs for those. And they are not specifically about addiction. I have a trauma, on the 16th, 17th, 18th is the general class intensive. I do a separate one on substance use, and I'm in the process of revamping that class. So that will be later in the year, and will probably require this initial 3-day, and it'll be an add-on instead of a whole separate training. It'll be an add-on to the 3-day. So if you are interested in the model, that's where you should start, either with the half-day training in the 27th or the 3-day training. I'll be doing another live in-person training of the 3-day in May, at the early May. You can go to my website at traumaeducation.com. Make sure you sign up for my newsletter there. I send out a weekly newsletter called the Chain Breakers Weekly Reset. It just went out today at 12 o'clock. And I give out just some encouragement for people, for providers, a little encouragement for survivors, because a lot of us that are providers are also survivors, right? Mm-hmm. Right? It's a high percentage of those of us in the caring field are also survivors. And so the newsletter's 5 or 6 minute read. And I always have some kind of free download for you. Today's download is, I can't remember but I put together a nice little handout for you today that you can print and use. I think Miranda shared a great, sweet testimony that they used in their facility, the one I did for Christmas on letting joy in.
Definitely. And I got 18 beautiful women, and they were very impactful. We are doing a follow-up meeting this Sunday, and I'm going to go to the next week and give them some more, Dr. Colson.
Excellent. Excellent. Any other questions? I'll stay here as long. We've got 3 people left in the room. The others have left, but I'm happy to stay here and answer questions as long as you want to ask them.
The cup of needs.
Oh, the cup of needs is what we're doing. Yes, the cup of needs is the handout I did. It's a demonstration I do to talk about how trauma impacts our identity. It's another way of talking about it, the cup of needs. And there's a handout. The handout is for you to give to clients to help them work through and understand more about it.
Where do I find that?
At traumaeducation.com. Just down, and what I can do is I'll add you to the email list and you'll start getting them. I have not put them online yet, but you know what, I can just send that handout out to everybody in here. I'll be happy to send that out when I send out the PowerPoint. What I have to do to send you the PowerPoint is save it as a handout and a PDF, and then I can send it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, he collected all the emails.
Yeah.
He's got them all. He'll send them to me.
Have you
Yes. Go ahead, in the room.
Have you heard of the book, What's Right With You?
No, I have not.
So that's a book that when you take the CARES class with Georgia Council for Recovery, that's one of the first things that they have you read before you even come into the class. And part of what I think is great about that class is they go into, and what he does in that book is a validation of, you need to know where the root was of where the substance use came in. It doesn't give you an excuse to stay there, but you have to know where it comes from to be able to walk through and move forward, and then to be able to walk through with others. And that's what that book does, is teach you on figuring out where your trauma in a sense comes from, of where your addiction came from. And
is it available?
It's available
on Amazon?
online, and it's a very easy, short book. I can't remember. It's yellow, and it's called What's Right With You.
What's Right With You?
Yeah, it takes the negative of addiction through the positive of recovery and how you, and it's very trauma based, the book is, and it is
I like
from
that.
a
Yeah,
psychologist.
it's written by Brian Duncan.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Dr.
Yeah.
Duncan.
And it's great of, for me, I can say that mine came from, did I have addiction in my family? And, my real father was an alcoholic, but he wasn't in my home. That for me, my addiction was environment, of what I saw that I thought was normal.
Yeah.
So
I can't find it. I was looking for it on Audible.
it's not on Audible. I know.
I love Audible.
I love Audible very much.
I can
so.
listen to it driving back and forth.
Exactly.
I just finished a great book on Audible.
Yeah.
And I'm on to another one. And that's another thing I do now on the book, on the newsletter. I just added, Miranda, you might see, I just the last couple of weeks added what I've been reading and or listening to, what I've been listening to, and then some points about different things. So I finally finished the book I was listening to on Audible. Anybody else? Any other questions or comments? I'm going to wrap us up with prayer, if that's okay with everybody. All right, let's pray. Dear Lord Jesus, we are so grateful. We are so thankful. I just cannot thank you any more than about your grace, your mercy in our lives, and the opportunity that you have given each one of us to help to serve others, to spread the good news that you're not mad at us, that you love us, that you want to heal us, that you're right here waiting for us just to reach out to you, Lord. I just am so very grateful that you have allowed me to be a part of your mission here on this earth and in this community. And I just pray that you would this week, each one of us would hear from you and be encouraged and continue to feel your comfort and your call in our lives, and that we would see healing and see the results of your work in our clients' lives. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate you all. Thank you for listening to me, and I'm sorry I went so long, but it was so nice to see everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Colson. Love you.
Love you too, Miranda. Thank you for your prayers.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Nice to meet you, Pastor Ron.
Thank you. You
Good
too.
to see you, Don.